Welcome back to MVM. Today we are going to introduce you to a brand new game from a brand new publisher. This is called Sea of Legends from Guildhall Studios. It is a 1-to-4 player sandbox game that has a story that is driven by an app in which you're going to be representing a captain on the high seas trying to gain fame and notoriety.
Yeah, we like our pirate games here, and like Jeremy said, this is a sandbox game that lets you do a wide array of different things to try to score your points, and the game is going to end when someone gets 10 of those notoriety. However, it can end a little sooner depending on what might happen in the storyline.
So there's a lot of unique things going on in this. We're going to point out a couple of them. Number one, we already mentioned this is an app-driven game. Still has the board, still has the cards, still has the awesome miniatures. However, all the story isn't contained within that app, meaning that each time you play, it's going to be a little bit different. Why is it going to be different? For a number of reasons. One, because each of the players is going to have a different captain, they're going to have a different lover, and they're going to have a different nemesis. These cards are going to be represented by these that you see here that can be flipped over from one side to the other. That means that the story that you go on is going to change depending upon the locations you go to and who those lovers and nemesis are.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can take a look at one of these cards. It's both a lover and a nemesis, depending on how you want to play it. So you're going to get two of these and put one on the left and one on the right of your captain's card. And that's what you've got to play with for the rest of the game. They're going to define some of the missions and quests that you can go on.
And when you start the game, your captain will be in one of these locations on the board, along with a number of different quest markers that are going to represent your captain's quest, your lover's quest, and your nemesis's quest. And these are locations that will drive kind of your actions on where you want to go and what you want to do. However, there's 4 other locations on the board that you need to pay attention to. That's because all these locations have ports on them that represents places where you can get more crew, different ships, and even upgrade things through the course of the game.
Yeah, and in addition to all those locations, the map is really going to start to fill up because every game is going to have 3 factions, basically, or world events. In this one, we have the Dread Tide, the Children of Taloc, and then the Spanish. These are going to populate the game through events turn to turn, and you're going to have to deal with these because the other players at the table are going to control them against you as well.
What's really unique is that these factions have a number of different cards that will be revealed through that app. So as you do missions for each of these different factions, you're going to be able to be entwined with them to be able to kind of drive your story and your narrative forward. In fact, the game is so intricate that it's going to allow you to interfere with other people's plans through the game. Now, the game is supposed to have over 200 different storylines in it, and those storylines can intertwine with other players. So if David is siding with the Dread Tide, I may be able to do missions that can foil his plans to do such. Now, we mentioned that you're trying to get 10 notoriety. The game can also end in 2 other ways by these factions completing their own base of rules, so to speak. And again, you don't really know what those are because they're going to be driven by the app.
Yeah, and we don't want to ruin too much, but some of those things will have an effect on whether or not you win as well. So the way the game plays out can vary vastly from game to game. I actually had a chance to demo this back at PAX U and just played around, and then we've had a chance to play it more recently. Both times, things in that app can play out quite differently. You're going to get a very different combination. Even if you picked very similar or the same lover and nemesis, things can play out completely different, or in a different order at least, from the last time.
That's because the app itself will rearrange those story missions even if you have the same set of characters to play with. Now, going back to the basic gameplay, it's actually very simple to play for a sandbox game. You're either moving and taking an action or just taking an action. Movement is always done by your ship. Now, everyone's going to have a ship to start the game, and of course, you can go to docks to be able to upgrade these ships. When you do so, you have to pay coin, obviously, to the port to be able to upgrade them and look through a stack of cards. These will increase the amount of crew that you can have. It's going to increase your maneuverability on the board, and it's going to increase your ability to do combat in the game.
Yeah, and speaking of crew, you're all going to start with 3 crew members as well. There is another location on the board, the hiring hall, that you can go to, and when you interact with that, you're able to hire even more crew. Now, like Jeremy said, your ship is going to have to be at a certain level to hold more crew, but you can always throw some guys overboard if you want to replace them as well.
There's also another place you can go to, and that's the tavern. These will give you rumors or additional quests that you can try to go on. These are going to be kind of potluck because you never know what you're going to go and what kind of rumors you're going to find. And the final location on the board are the actual hidden coves. Your money is always vulnerable in this game from other players and from the NPCs from the game. However, you can bury your treasure to keep it.
Yeah, those hideouts not only do that, but it allows you to rest up as well. So any damage you've taken, you're going to be able to take that off and basically refresh.
Speaking of the factions, we already mentioned the 2 factions that you're going to begin with. These factions, as we said, are going to have a number of cards underneath of them. They're also going to be able to level up through the course of the game. So as certain actions happen in the app, they're going to become stronger and stronger. So you're going to have to compete with larger hordes of enemies throughout the game. The other thing is how the structure works. Each player is going to take that move and action around the table. And once all the players are done, you're going to have a spawn event. This is only going to happen at the end of each round. These spawn cards are going to tell you exactly what's going to happen depending upon the faction and what level that faction is.
Yeah, and those will ultimately, along with some other gameplay mechanics, bring out these sort of the cherry on top of the world events. These massive miniatures will come out on the board. They are sort of representatives of the very top of those factions, and they are really going to mess with the game. In fact, when those things come out, that's really what puts those faction end of game things into play.
Now, as you can imagine, as the game progresses, the board is going to fill up with a number of different minions and other players, and it's going to be very tricky to navigate these areas. One of the things you can do on your turn is actually take over these ports. When you take them over, you're going to have to do combat in the game, and if you do so, you're able to plant your flag on top of that port. That's going to allow you to collect 2 extra gold at the end of the round. Again, that gold's going to fuel your economy through the game to be able to hire more people and to be able to upgrade your boats.
Yeah, and we did say combat, and it is going to mean some die rolling, but that's where your crew comes into play. Your initial crew members and a lot of the crew that you might hire throughout the game is going to let you mitigate those dice, maybe add a die to a roll before you roll it. These guys are going to tap, and they're going to stay tapped until, like I said earlier, you go to your hideout and rest.
So again, the big draw of this game is that it uses an app to navigate all the different stories. And as we already mentioned, this is going to have a number of different stories. So each time that you play it, you're not always going to see the same thing. And let me explain that real briefly. We played one of our games and I was able to go to a port and I met a father being a priest.
Yes.
And I decided to side with them and become bad. The next time we went through that app, I never found the father. It was a completely different storyline, even though I had the same captain and the same nemesis and the same lover. Again, the game is going to be able to rearrange those stories so that you're never seeing the same game twice.
And the other cool thing about those stories is once you get on one of those quests, the other players at the table can actually negatively affect those because they're going to interact with one another. They might have something that happens in their quest line that then affects the quest that you're doing. And that may even affect your lover and your nemesis. Your lover may become a nemesis.
Yeah.
All sorts of different things can happen in this game, all in a race for those notoriety points.
So that is Sea of Legends from a brand new studio called Guildhall Studios. It is a 1 to 4 player game. Yes, you heard that right. This can be played solo. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Make sure you guys go to the Kickstarter page because this art is amazing.
Yeah.
These miniatures are super detailed and you can see all that there. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.